beginning. There we go. Okay, here we are.
Marvelous. Thank you.
Yeah, so here is Elon Musk's chart, which has Mercury out of bounds, which is like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
um, it, it definitely does kind of, and the Mercury is right conjunct his ascendant. So
Oh, wow.
that is obviously one important planet for him, and Mercury is also fast in motion, which means, and Mercury does have some dignity. So Mercury is, and it's in its joy in the first house. So Mercury is definitely getting a lot of kudos from all the astrology and is very much he's inspirational. It's in mutable water. It's in ruled by the moon in the third in Virgo. So we have a mutable.
Interesting to be ruled by the moon, to have all that drive and sort of sun and Mercury, I think of as a bit fiery and fast moving. Well, the moon's fast moving too, but yeah, to be ruled by the moon but have all the sun and
Yeah.
Mercury.
So if
Bit
you look
emotional.
at the Hellenistic technique, have you ever played with the helmsman idea? Where
No, I don't know.
your
Oh,
chart
the Time Lord?
No,
Yeah.
this one is where the metaphor for the chart is it's a ship. Your
Mm-hmm.
ascendant is your steering, your rudder, or your steering wheel. So the planet that rules the ascendant is who's got their hands on the wheel, steering it to where it wants to go. And here is it, the moon is in a nice sextile by sign, so they're in
Mm.
compatible signs. Mercury has a hand on the wheel, and so does the sun. So he knows where he wants to go, and
Yes,
it's all with ideas of the mind, and
makes sense.
both kinds of mind. It's the Mercury mind and it's the lunar mind. So where his emotions pull him is where his his mouth takes him, and analytics takes him. And the focus is on things that, I mean, think about all the stuff that he's been developing. He's got two kind of prongs where he has all the stuff local to the neighborhood, the cars, public transportation, and things like that in your areas, as well as his attitude towards the solar system as being part of our neighborhood. So
That's true.
it's
Yeah.
really kind of interesting that we have this. Mercury also rules his 12th house and is square to the planets in there. Now, this is not necessarily as potent a square as we might have otherwise, because Virgo and Gemini, both ruled by Mercury, are, you've got a common ruler there. But at the same time, it does kind of indicate that perhaps his patience or his sense of, I want to acquire everything, and mutable
Mm.
air, it's like, does he ever settled on what he wants to acquire? He's always doing something, and maybe not always so good for him. Uh,
I agree. And
yeah,
Saturn in that mutable air, that's
Saturn
not
in
comfortable, is it?
no, Saturn is not all that comfortable there. And look who's directly across from Saturn.
Fog and confusion and spirituality and all that stuff.
All that stuff. Neptune saying, "Can we throw clouds at the issue?" And maybe a few.
Yes, let's
How about some
make
ketamine and a few other drugs too? His
quite,
daily
yes.
environment perhaps is not always doing as well, and it's wide, but it is square to the moon as well. That Neptune.
Yeah.
So
And is it 12th house that can, I mean, addictions can be represented in many places, but is it 12th house that's sort of traditionally
well,
potentially?
12th house is basically self-undoing, the skeletons in the closet, the stuff you kind of tuck under the rug because you don't want to deal with it and it comes back to bite you. The positive side of the 12th house is when you do your work on all of that stuff, where you go into your own attic, so to speak, and you rummage around in there to find out what's there and work with it. But the downside is we don't often do that. The 12th house kind of represents those sorts of things that we don't do. And and notice that 12th house is in happy relationship to the 8th house, which is a lot of things go to the 8th house, but predominantly my feeling about the 8th house is it's that first house fully independent of the personal under the nighttime side of the chart. Because in whole
Yeah.
sign, I like using whole sign as a blueprint. I know if we were using Placidus or something, we'd have a whole different perspective here. But to me, this is kind of like looking at a blueprint in the sense where the 8th house then is here you have some, here you're under control, and now you're getting into public. And there's a whole lot of things you cannot control. So the 8th house, you have taxes, you have deaths, you have, the things that you have obligations as being part of your society that you have no control over. And so it's kind of this combination of that kind of idea of what society is demanding of you. And it's also where you have to sometimes just plain give things up. It has a positive side in that it is also the second house from the 7th. So it also represents what helps support a partnership. So that means, that's why it has contracts or finances from other people.
Oh, yeah.
So you've got a couple of pieces there. And that is in a trine relationship with the Venus.
Wow. So it is.
Which it's kind of an interesting one because it's sort of like he loves to accumulate. And Venus is ruling the 11th. So he certainly makes a lot of friends and a lot of partnerships is Saturn ruled, which maybe why he doesn't always have very good long lasting partnerships. But here is the results of getting stuff. And that, that's very active. Let's go and get and acquire and this and that and the other thing. But it's all airy. There's this sense of all the stuff that he has gotten. In many ways, it's based on his ability to inspire more than it's based on physical stuff. He's
very airy. Yeah.
Yeah, he's very airy. And the success of his companies have come because he bought the original company for the electric cars for Tesla and things like that. He's bought a lot of stuff and acquired it, but he's not necessarily been more than inspirational in how he's run them. He's often, all of his ideas have actually not helped those companies. He can seem to hire a lot of good people, but there's this kind of not so tangible quality to it that's emotionally run. He knows where he wants to go emotionally. And
it's that wishful thinking. It feels like he's got big dreams, to go to the planets and it seemed like he was all for being kinder to this planet with the electric cars and that sort of thing. But I don't think that that's really a big drive for him.
I don't think it is. His whole idea of doing all the space stuff is to get off of the planet. A lot of what he has talked about. But he sure is a good showman. He's a very good showman. Mercury is so good for anybody who is in business that wants, and having the Mercury ruled by the moon, he knows how to hook people's emotions on things and get them enthused. But Mercury.
Go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, think of the archetype of Mercury. When the god Mercury was born, the first thing he did was steal Apollo's cattle. Then when Apollo wanted him back, he made a trade because he found some pipe, some reeds, and he made a panpipe out of it. And he said, "I can give you this." And so he still wound up with most of the cattle, and Apollo wound up with some musical instruments. So that is very Mercury.
Yeah.
And the Odyssey, how it's held up as a story that, oh yeah, Odysseus, he is such a hero and he goes and everything. I reread the Odyssey recently. Odysseus succeeds because he's really a con man in a sense. He's constantly talking himself out of things. And he does really well, but all of his men die by the end of those 20 years. They never make it home.
No. Odysseus feels to me a bit like just reacting. He doesn't really have a drive or a purpose, but these things just keep happening to him and he just keeps reacting. And therefore I'm in this situation, I need to con my way out of it. Oh, and I've lost some men. And I'm in this situation, I need to con my way. And yeah, it's not as, the hero journey is less endearing to me as I get older.
Well, in that sense, but that's a Mercury journey.
Yeah.
That is very much a Mercury style of hero. And I think that in many ways, when you look at Musk, he really fits that archetype because he's constantly, it's almost like the dancing lawyer in Chicago who's trying, just kind of, how can I manipulate this? How can I do this? Where he gets everything and he gets everybody going along. And he does have real, he has some real vision to him.
He's such and the showman element, that lawyer, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Razzle dazzle. That was
razzle dazzle, that right.
Give him a little razzle dazzle. Yeah.
And there's that sun in the first house along with the Mercury in the first house. So that's driving a ship.
Yeah.
And the other thing that they use with the ship analogy is the owner of the ship that knows the destination and where the product is going to go, basically the ultimate destination, is the ruler of the sect light. So this is a day chart. So the sect light is the sun, because the day charts, basically its team is the sun, Jupiter, and Saturn. They're the day team, and the night team is Mars, Venus, and the moon. Mercury is rising after the sun, so Mercury is actually part of the night team. And the ruler of the sect light is the moon. And the moon's in that mutual reception with Mercury. It's a really good position to have. It's really supportive of, he knows where he's going on an instinctual level. I'm not so sure that Musk could really describe to you, if you really wanted him to pin him down, how well he'd be able to pin down what's really going on, because it's like he has so much in his head all the time. There's that kind of hyper quality to him. And I think we see that a lot with this and with the Mercury out of bounds.
Yeah.
Now, a few other things you can see in here. Uranus in his fourth house. So that immediately made me want to say, okay, did he get along with his dad or his parents all that well? And no, he didn't. He initially left home and said, no, I'm going to live with my dad. I don't want to live with my mom. But then he hated living with his dad. And then he wound up in a military school for when he was younger that he absolutely hated and got bullied all the time.
I can imagine.
So you have the two houses of parents not in the best shape.
Yeah.
And they're ruled by that Venus and Mars. So there's something idealistically there that he must have pulled from it. But it's still Venus and Mars. These are night planets in day signs on the day side of the chart. neither one of them, they may be part of the sect team. So, but they're not the team that is the ruler of the chart. They're like the visiting team.
Yeah.
And there's a visiting team that maybe, they had to travel too far and they're not feeling all that great. So they're having trouble
and not used to the weather. And
yeah. Yeah. So even though they're working very nicely together, it's not necessarily the most beneficial as it could be if they had been in different positions.
I wonder if that sort of the ideology part of it is there, but the real connection to parents sort of isn't, in a
And I think
helpful way, not in the chart, but maybe to his grandfather. Maybe it was that the ideas skipped a generation and he's like rebelling against the parents, but the strength of that, no, actually there's something to it because his grandfather was the one that moved them to South Africa. And I think that that Musk very much agrees with that move. He seems to be promoting a lot of those sorts of ideas.
And look who rules his own kids, Mars. Jupiter's in here retrograde saying kids and more kids.
Yeah.
It is retrograde and it's ruled by Mars, and he hasn't exactly been a parent to his kids.
And in Scorpio. So that's a sting in the tail to that parenting style.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have you can really see the proliferation of creative ideas, proliferation of children, proliferation of this. But when it comes to having a real relationship, Saturn
and almost conjunct out of sign to Neptune too, so making things confusing. And yeah.
So it's an interesting chart.
It certainly is. And yeah, it makes a lot of sense as to how he's going. And he doesn't seem driven by that, like an overarching idea. He likes the thrill of the moment. I wonder if he's going to drop Tesla because it's not doing so well and focus more on rockets or something.
Well, it is interesting that where he really landed in trouble was, he was going so well and everybody was really kind of gung-ho for him until he bought a social media company, a Mercury company, which became his 12th house, I think.
I think so.
He acquired it because it has certainly not. He's used it in many ways to promote himself, but it also drained. I mean, the value was dropped by half, and it has not really done what I think he had hoped it would.
It's been a very double-edged sword. I guess there was something about Trump's first 2016 to 2020 and that immediacy of information that suddenly the world was getting from the White House that we never had before, and these tweets and covfefe in the middle of the night. And I think that he felt that was like a version of authenticity, and that was what he thought X would do, or Twitter would, it's authentic. But it's a double-edged sword, because if your authenticity isn't what the majority are pulling for, then it's going to hurt you monetarily.
And it's interesting because I think it's his very first company that he founded, he called X, and renaming Twitter to X. And yet, what does X represent in the general culture? It's like, oh yeah, I don't know my name, I'll just sign an X.
Yeah. And I know that there's X marks the spot, but generally speaking, it's the or if you hear that in game shows, it's X.
Right.
It's getting it wrong on, but yeah, I wouldn't have gone for X myself.
I just, there's kind of an irony there that Mercury is, it rules two mutable signs that are double signs, where you have this double quality to everything.
Yeah.
And obviously with the Mercury mutual reception with the moon in the mutable sign there, it seems like that really does show up. Anyway, so I thought let's,
Mhm.
okay, let's go take a look at what he's going through right now.
Yes, transits. Excellent.
And actually, let me adjust this. There we go. Actually, I think it'll show better now from current slide. No, maybe not. Why is this not? Whoops. Come on. Well, it's cutting off his name, but we're still getting all the information we need there, so that's okay. Okay,
Yeah,
so this is
that's
his
fine.
secondary progression. I thought I'd see first. All right, what's going on in terms of just the secondary progressions are like the slow development of stuff.
Okay. Progressions are a little new to me.
Okay,
So is that when you put the sun a day forward for each day?
right,
No. Yes.
right,
Right.
right. Secondary progressions show a slow development over time because, if you live to 90, you're only 3 months after your birth
Yeah.
in the progression. So they
Yep.
show this sort of ebb and flow that's going on. And the outer planets, starting, Jupiter moves a little bit, but when you get to Neptune and Pluto and Uranus, they may not move more than a degree or two in your entire life.
Mhm.
But what's interesting is this is for June 1st. His moon is about to change sign, and it will change sign every 2.5 years.
Mhm.
It has just passed the new moon. So if you
Yes.
think of lunar phases, when a progression has a lunar phase, if you follow the lunar phases, very often at the new moon is a change, a shift. And
Yep.
when Trump got in office and Elon Musk started Doge, that was that last little bit from before and the new moon. So that would have happened.
Makes
Actually, it
sense.
would have been at the beginning of the year. It would be pretty close to that actual. It would be becoming a new moon right at that point, which set him off on a whole new trajectory. And that moon is about to trine the Neptune. So he's feeling it.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's not trine. That's going to be coming
Where?
Neptune. Excuse me. We'll be squaring the Neptune. It was trining 2.5 years ago when he was riding high in Tesla and things like that. It was trine. It was finishing up from the previous new moon. So it takes, with 2.5 years, you have a whole 18 some year cycle going on.
Mm.
No, it's longer than that. What am I saying? It's
12, 24? No,
20,
20, 30. 30
yeah,
cycle.
30 year. This 30-year cycle. So you're
Yeah.
basically very close to mimicking your Saturn cycle with the progressed moon. And so
Yes.
it's so whatever trouble he's in now is about to be even more so because
Yeah.
this has been going, this is going through his 12th house, but it's now going to hit the first house and become very noticeable in terms of the roots of who he is, how he's presenting himself. That moon will square the Neptune. Right now, the sun is squaring Jupiter. So the sun
So
and
he's,
Jupiter have and is about to be an exact square.
yeah.
So he's been having issues. The moon just finished that exact square. The sun at a degree per year approximately is coming into that square. Venus will come into that square within a couple years. So he's got a period of time where kind of one thing after another is going to be giving him trouble.
And it's Jupiter, so it's making things big, but it's also abundance, but it can be it reminds me of someone saying, why is cocaine so good? Oh, because it enlivens your personality. It makes your personality so much bigger. And it's like, yes, but what if you're an asshole? And that's the thing about Jupiter. It's going to be making his sun a lot bigger, but it depends on what, like that. I don't think it's going to be it's going to be dicey times for the next 2 years for him, isn't it?
Yeah. And he had, by the end of this year, he will have had the perfected with the sun. The moon will have gone into the first house and conjuncting the Mercury. And the Mercury is now retrograde. It's no longer in the progression. It's not out of bounds. It's come around and it's now down here. The moon is shifting. It will be approaching by declination with the sun. So no, actually, I wonder if the moon is heading from north to south. I'd have to look at the declination graph because these two being so close, usually the declination with the moon will follow suit.
Mm-hmm.
But he was born with a Jupiter-Neptune parallel, in a contraparallel to Saturn. He still has that. That has not changed. Mars right now is contraparallel to the midheaven. So,
and right on the North Node, pretty much.
and yeah, it's like, it's kind of interesting, and it's also
and Uranus
in an aspect to the ascendant.
But so an adjustment aspect.
An adjustment aspect to the ascendant, conjunct the North Node. It's not quite there yet. So that too, I mean, this year is going to be a major year for him. And it's not going to be a happy one. Because this is also sixth house. It's fixed air, ruled by the Saturn. Progressions, I don't always pay a lot of attention to the signs as much, but sometimes it's worth just thinking about.
At least the nature of the sign, the fixed water, the mutable or not. I think that's,
Yeah.
And that house is also health or am I thinking 7?
And he's getting older. He's
and the daily routines to keep healthy, like eating well.
Yeah. And he has been doing, I mean, from all rumors, he has
by all accounts. He's not taking care of himself.
He's not been taking care of himself. And this Jupiter is moving really, really slowly. Because remember, in his natal chart, come on, back to the natal chart. The natal chart had Jupiter at 2738 retrograde. It's now direct at 2742. So it's almost back to its natal position. But it will start picking up a little bit of speed, which means that for a good 10 years or so, he's going to have this approaching the Neptune, continuing to approach Neptune. With the first thing that happens is contacting Pluto.
Transformations. Takes away what you thought was your power and leaves you what is really your power.
Yeah.
I like that description of Pluto because it's a crumbling, but it's also the nascent start of something new.
Right. So, and Jupiter has that quality of truth, but it also has that kind of vision quality of what you want to be truth. If Jupiter doesn't necessarily have what was actually there, Pluto tends to be more of, I don't care what you think. I don't care what you believe. This is what it is. It doesn't let you slide by in any way.
Sorry, my daughter's just popped in. We're talking about star signs. There we go.
So we have the closest. One nice thing about here, I always put up the closest aspects. So these are the ones that are really happening right now. We've got the Sun square, Jupiter, Mars conjuncting the nodes. The node quincunx the ascendant, a semi-square. Whoops, back up. Semi-square between Venus and Uranus. No surprise. And these ones are ones that are coming over time. So, the sun is moving a little bit slower than Venus is if it's approaching. So Venus will be soon reaching the sun before it actually moves further. He's going to have some challenges. And I wonder if some of those challenges, because Venus rules his second house, will have to do with his fortune. As an incredibly rich person, he can lose half of his fortune and still be richer than most of the people in the world. But there may be, yeah, it might be a good thing. It might not be such a good thing. Of course, when the sun gets Cazimi, when it finally reaches within 17 minutes of the sun, traditionally that's an idea of when it gets close to the sun in natal charts. I haven't really played with this one much in progressions because progressions being symbolic, I'm not sure how much it applies, but in a natal chart, when a planet gets close to the sun, astronomically, it goes away. You can't see it because the sun is too bright. So when it gets about 15 degrees, they call it under the beams, and the planet starts to turn its autonomy over to the sun. When it gets to about 8 degrees, you don't see it anymore. And the sun has basically said, you're totally in service to me. It's kind of like how Trump treats his cabinet. They may be independent people before he hires them, but at that point, once he's hired them, they have to follow whatever he says and whatever he thinks and whatever he wants. So they put all of their skills to his service. And that's kind of what combustion is when or being burnt up by the sun.
When I say we need duck refund, we need duck refund.
But when you get to really, really close to the exact conjunction, then it's more like you're the favored person. Whatever you say, the sun goes, whatever you want. So that'll be interesting to see what happens when that, but that's a little ways away. We've got a couple of years before that, I think. Depends on how fast. How fast is Mercury moving? Moving fast. I don't have the travel on here to know how quickly it'll get there.
And it's in Leo, which likes the center stage. So it's like having a spotlight as well.
Yeah.
And ruled by the sun. That will be interesting.
And when the moon was back there a little bit, well, that's when the whole thing with Doge was going on. When he was being hired by Trump and he was in the spotlight. And it wasn't pretty. Because he thought he was doing what he should be doing, and nobody else thought he was doing what he should be doing, although Trump thought he was doing what he should be doing. So, kind of an interesting. But to me, this is saying that he's still got some rough times ahead. Let's look so that's developmental. That's seeing kind of the process. Now let's look at, this is solar arc. Now, the difference between progression and solar arc, the progression is going real time, day by day, exactly what the planets are doing. Solar arc directions is using that same logic for the sun, but then it's like turning the dial. Everything stays in exactly the same relationship to each other, but they all move at the speed that the sun is doing day by day. And what's interesting with solar arc is, to me, is it really shows events more than development. So I usually always have solar arc right on the natal chart. And he's got some interesting ones here. The midheaven is directly on that Venus of his riches, his approach to acquiring everything, how he communicates, because it's ruled by this Mercury here, how he presents himself, all of that is his reputation, and where he's called to do stuff is all being triggered. We've got anything else? In about 3 years, the ascendant and Mercury will be hitting the moon. So should see some interesting things in his ideas in about 3 years. And you can kind of count, because it is approximately a degree per year, that once you do it, a solar arc, you can kind of go back a couple of years, forward a couple of years, and be pretty accurate as to timing of things. It's a really good timing technique. Pluto will be in a quincunx in another half a year, no, a little bit over a half a year, to that Venus. At the same time, the midheaven is the midheaven will be passed by then. So whatever we're getting right now and have been getting for the past couple of months will be probably revisited around then. Last year, we saw Uranus. Well, no, not last year, just a couple of months back. It would have been towards the beginning of this year. Uranus was conjunct this natal Neptune. Because this is 1 degree, 2 minutes. Whoops, back up. This is 0 degrees, 48 minutes. And since they're all moving at basically, well, if you have 60 degrees is what moves over one entire year, then every month you have about 4 or 5, that makes it about 5-6 degrees, or 5-6 minutes rather. 6 minutes every month, 5 minutes every month, somewhere in there. So this would have been earlier this year. This would have been at the beginning of the year, probably when Trump was hiring him. He was shaking up the work environment, which kind of makes sense to his ideals of what a work environment ought to be. We have Jupiter at 19. So that's also contacting the Venus here. His ability to relate to people in many ways, how he brings things to him. You can think of it in how he acquires things. It's one of the meanings for Venus. Perhaps it's also reflecting somewhat of the fact that the multiplicity of children have been in the news quite a bit, at least here in the States. But it looks like the sun here at 27 is square to the Jupiter in his 5th house. So yes, that is highlighting the issues of his children, of his creative stance, and also highlighting with Pluto of having, because they're both at 27, 27, 27. So what has been in the news is basically his life situation in terms of his children, in terms of his creativity. He's been trying to now get back to Tesla and to his other companies and satisfy the board of trustees on those. But and the moon is at 29, so the moon has already gone by. It had hit the midheaven and IC and has gone by. So he's now out of the public eye. That's 28, 20, this is 29. I don't see a whole lot more of what, let's see what this, we've got some of so Uranus opposition Saturn. Oh, I didn't even notice that one. We have Uranus, yes, at 1 opposition the Saturn. Consequences. Sudden consequences. Sudden consequences that maybe were not visible because the Saturn is in his natal 12th house. Sudden consequences not visible that may relate to work environments. Uranus is in this here, also just past the Neptune in the sixth. We have a sesquisquare between Mars and Jupiter, so there is a tension going on there. I do like doing this is in solar fire, and it's in the multi-wheel one where it actually will give you the closest. And when you do it with a solar arc like this, you can see even the timing. So things that are 30 degrees would be like a half year. Here would be a 1 year and a couple of months before it gets perfected. So it helps give you kind of a feel on timing. Now we don't know, we only have a B, which means we have a biography for his birth time, rounded to 7:30 a.m. So I haven't checked about, tweaking some things to rectify. But that's one of the things that solar arc can be very good for, because it is a very good timing technique. Anyway, questions, observations, other things that you see here, or things that you'd like to ask. Hello, Cheryl. Is that you don't, I can't. You've joined us a little bit later. Do you have any questions or things you'd like to look at? And
I don't have any questions. What I do see is that there's those three aspects: the Mars, what is that? A sesqui-square Jupiter, Jupiter, in conjunct Venus, and the Sun square Jupiter are all going to be happening at the same time.
very shortly followed by that Uranus disrupting.
Well, Uranus is separating.
That's separating. You're right. That's separating. So it's already been there.
Separating. So in about, I don't know, a month or so, he's going to have some sort of event. It's probably going to be a challenging one.
Yeah, depending on how well, even with not being all that accurate, we're still pretty accurate on this. But yeah, I'm thinking that we just had a number of things, and that when these perfect, we should see some, especially because it has personal planets, the Mars, Venus, and the Sun all involved. Should see something major. Let's see. I did this for June 1st. Let's see if, what I didn't do is I didn't add in the transits. Let me go back to solar fire. Not now. Go away. Let's go pull up. Chart. Open. On. Open. Let's see. Let's do, excuse me. Well, let's do the solar arc for today. And let's do the transits for today. So let's give a try wheel here. Oops, come on over from my other monitor. There we go. Okay. Now, I like looking first at just seeing what's there and then adding the transits, because once you get the transits added, it starts to get the eyes. But let's see if we've got anything. Let's see, the Neptune. Well, Saturn is at 1 degree, transiting Saturn. So it's contacting his natal Saturn, and It is contacting the Uranus at 1 degree. I'd say he's.
We also have,
Go ahead.
oh yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Um, I was just going to draw attention to that Mars is aggravating the Sun Jupiter aspect.
Oh, yes, definitely has been aggravating that. Combine that with the Saturn, it's like he's been getting a lot of consequences for his actions in the past couple of months, hasn't he? And look who's just gotten to 0. So the transiting Jupiter is finished triggering to the natal Jupiter, and now it is moving in on the Neptune and the solar arc Uranus. In another couple of days, we'll have the moon, or not the moon, the sun. Well, we got another, week and a few days before we have it transitioned into Cancer. Who else is having a good time? Yeah, Mars is triggering the solar arc sun, the natal Pluto, the natal Jupiter. I think that's it. It's quite enough, probably. So the upheaval in his life and businesses it's not over yet. We should be seeing another few things of putting him into the news. And he's going to be having a shift, solar arc shift. We've had almost 30 years, or just shy of 30 years of having the moon in solar arc. Here is now going to be shifting into the 5th house. He might turn his attention away from the politics to concentrate on his businesses and his ideas and what he wants to be building there, and maybe even having to pay more attention to his kids. Because I think there, at least if I remember, there's a couple of lawsuits over women who he had kids with and said he was going to pay for everything and then didn't. So that might be coming into the fore as the moon works its way through this 5th house. As well as his creative business babies. Transiting Uranus has only got another few months before it enters Gemini, in which case it will be transiting over his Saturn. It's been contacting the Jupiter, and then so he's getting Uranus from 2 sides. He's getting it from the solar arc, and he's now getting it from the transit. Life should be interesting for him soon. Anyway, we have played for about an hour. Any last questions or observations or questions? Hey, Laura, back.
Nothing I can think of for questions. Just wanted to say thank you. It's been very interesting.
Yes, thank.
Yeah, I like my favorite way to do prediction stuff, or when a client comes in and I want to see what's going on, is having both the progression and the solar arc, because you get a feel for what's slowly been developing, and then you get the feel for what's kind of going bong. I sort of think of the solar arc as that, especially when you have what I call a pile up. In other words, a bunch of planets at the same degree. That it's kind of like, okay. the other thing I do with progression is I will often do the declination chart. Have you ever done that where it does the wave of how the moon is working to see where the moon goes and intersects with the other planets? Because sometimes when you have those intersections, you also see when things get triggered. Anyway, have a fun weekend and enjoy. And I'm glad you showed up.
Thank
Thanks
you,
again.
Enid.